Alrighty, welcome to Law and Life with Judge Bill Brandt. We're here with episode 3.
Hey, Kayla, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Just great.
Awesome,
Absolutely great.
Yay, so I know last time we talked about property and how to protect your property, insurance, the implications if we don't have insurance, and kind of what it looks like within living with people and things in that sort of manner.
Right.
So today we're going to jump into rights, privacy, and the internet. We will begin with, so what does it mean when we say we have rights?
Okay, this is one of those topics that can go super deep, and we could talk about and constitutional scholars and people talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and we're not doing that. What I want to talk about, I'm going to make a classification between two kinds of rights. Okay. The first kind of rights are the inalienable rights that are mentioned in the Constitution, and they're not all listed, but I think it says among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And those are rights that everybody possesses, but sometimes governments oppress people and take away their rights. And that's actually very common in the history of mankind and the history of the world. So the issue is, in a free society, what are the things that you're entitled to without signing a contract, without paying someone, without making a reciprocal agreement? Okay, what are your rights in a free society? And those are inherent or constitutional or just fundamental rights. And you could list those as a right to be left alone, a right to self-defense if you're not left alone, okay? A right to your property, a right to the fruits of your labor, a right to speak your mind, the right to have freedom of conscience, okay? And all of those rights, you could consider those as negative rights, which is to say, let's look at, the right to self-defense. Does that mean that somebody owes me training in martial arts? Because if I don't know any martial arts, I'm going to have a hard time defending myself. Or what if, does it mean that someone has to provide me with a firearm? No. That these are negative rights. These are things that you're entitled to just because you're standing there. Now, you may have trouble enforcing your rights, because if a robber sticks his gun in your belly and says, "Give me all your money," well, yeah, you have the right to self-defense. You're going to get killed exercising that right. You have a right to that money, but are you going to defend that? Are you going to say no, and then maybe he kills you? So you have to be ready to enforce your rights. Similarly, with freedom of speech, you have a right to say what you want. Do you have a right to a microphone? Do you have a right to a box on the street corner? Do you have a right to an amphitheater, or the right to have somebody provide you with the opportunity to make a podcast? No, but you can speak your mind. And if people quit listening to you, well, then they have a right to ignore you and be left alone. They're negative rights in that in the classical sense. But there are other rights that you have that you agree to. I'm going to buy this car, and I have a right to my car, to drive the car, but the bank has a security interest in the car, or the finance company, or General Motors Acceptance Corporation, or whatever it is, Ford Credit. They have a right to their payments. And if I don't make my payments, I lose my right to the car, because they're going to repossess the car. Like we talked about in leases and evictions last time, when you have a right to that dwelling, but you've got to follow the you can't engage in the prohibited conduct. You can't fail to pay the rent. So those contractual rights are things that you're entitled to based on some extra status, not the status of just being a human being, but some extra status. And that extra status is usually something you contract for, or you sign an agreement that you're going to have this and they're going to have that, which is a contract. Or it might just be sort of a customary right that you go into a restaurant. You kind of have a right to be waited on. Okay. On the other hand, that gets us kind of into the constitutional question. There were a number of cases in the 60s. Restaurants had segregated or had not served black people, and the Kennedy and Johnson administration, particularly under Robert Kennedy as the Attorney General for the Kennedy administration, they pursued those cases because people have a right to travel. If they have a right to travel, they have a right to eat while they're traveling and have a right to stay in an inn while they're traveling. And so they kind of layered those into a constitutional protection. I'm not sure that's exactly right, because freedom of association, I'm going to deal with the people I want to deal with. But sometimes things are in tension and they're not fully resolved, and we just kind of have to live with that. But
Absolutely.
does that make sense, that
makes
division?
sense.
The rights that are inherent in you as a human person, and the rights that you agree to based on making some arrangement.
So can I give you a scenario
Yes.
that came to mind when you were speaking? So how do we enforce those rights? And I'm going to give you this scenario that happened in a school setting. So one of my friends, him and his wife attend the university I just graduated from.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So happy to watch you walk the stage.
Thank you so much, Judge. So basically, he said that the professors were racist because they wouldn't respond to his emails, or that people wouldn't say hi to him and stuff in that sort of manner, right? But sorry, I'm trying not to laugh. But he said that as soon as he changed like the profile of his picture on like his student website, because he's black, that he started getting treated better. So I feel like that's hard to prove, and it's hard to like assume you're right in that aspect.
The fundamental questions are always, what's really happening, what's really going on, and who was that? Some science guy on TV used to say something like, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was a time in America when saying somebody was racist was not an extraordinary claim. It was common. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I was born in the middle of the last century, and there were Jim Crow laws in effect when I was born.
Oh my gosh.
But most of that, I'm not going to say there's no discrimination in America, but most of the laws have been squared away and restored us to a better understanding of, hey, everybody's a human being. The exception has been the laws that the recent Supreme Court cases, Harvard and North Carolina, were found guilty of not found guilty. They were found to have engaged in racial discrimination against white and Asian students in the Students for Fair Admissions against Harvard, and it was combined with Students for Fair Admissions against North Carolina. So those are still facts. People are being discriminated against, but it's usually not black people according to the law. Now, people make decisions every day about who they're going to say hi to, and those can be informed in a way that's not good.
Well, like you're
right?
saying, like, what was the term you used that, like, you can choose to not engage? You have a right to that.
Well, and
That goes
but
along.
that goes a long way. And
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys. Remember I said last time, good fences make good neighbors. Well, politeness and civility go a long way to making a society functioning and livable and enjoyable for everybody. On the other hand, somebody that treats you badly, or somebody that stands for things that you massively disagree with, you're not required to be their friend. You have the right to be left alone.
Yeah.
And sometimes people insist upon relationships that are unwanted and unwarranted. And I used to tell everybody, well, it takes two to tango. And if you want to engage in a friendly relationship with people, well, be as friendly as you can. But if they don't want to engage in a friendly relationship with you, it's just like the girl that didn't want to go to the prom with me. She didn't want to go, so we didn't go.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I hesitate to deal with the specifics of this situation because I don't know any facts.
Yeah, absolutely.
But nobody's entitled to friendship. Friendship is a gift. And so nobody has a right, I have a right to your friendship, Kayla. You have to be my friend. No, you don't. And that's okay, because otherwise it's almost like coerced charity, right? Charity is a gift of love, and it's its own thing. But if I have to pay so much money to be considered a good person by you, because I'm given the right amount to church, or the right amount to the Red Cross, or the right amount to any number of good charities, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
You give charity. Many people give charity because of the tax deduction, but you're supposed to give charity because you've got love in your heart and you care about other people.
Absolutely. I agree with you. But I also, I see the rights you're talking about, and a lot of people we're going to get into like social media and stuff, like almost abusing their rights and making really long stretches. Like, oh, because people don't say hi to me, they're racist. Like, I just think that's like a very long stretch, like almost kind of abusing your right.
That doesn't have anything to do with rights.
Yeah.
That has to do.
Well, they would claim that it's their right.
That's to do with the sense of entitlement.
Okay.
Okay. And, you're entitled to things. You're entitled to your rights, your fundamental rights. You're entitled to the rights that you contract for. Okay. You may be entitled to relationship rights with people I shouldn't say rights. You may be entitled to relationships of the people that you have relationships with, in terms of your friends or your family or your coworkers. You have a certain relationship, and that should be pretty stable. And if it changes, well, one of several things may be happening. Maybe those people just woke up one morning and decided not to have a relationship with you. That's unlikely. Maybe you have unintentionally done something that has perturbed the relationship, and they're a little bit worried about it and pulling back. Maybe you're a real outgoing person and you said something wrong and you didn't mean it in the way that they took it. But you got to just fix that. You got to just say, hey, is there something wrong? And if they say, I don't want to talk about it, they're entitled to be left alone.
Yeah, absolutely. So people confuse the two. Like,
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's very good clarification. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about privacy? Like, we kind of were going there a little bit, so people...
Let me segue from rights to privacy. Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
There were some Supreme Court cases 60 years ago. I think the case was in 1968 or 7, and it was a privacy right case in Connecticut, I believe, about contraception. And contraception was a huge social thing that blew up a lot of social things back in the 60s, 70s, and the reverberations are still present. But the Supreme Court held that there existed a thing, which had never been held before, called a right to privacy. And that's one of those areas, kind of like the right to go in a restaurant and order whatever you want and have them serve you. That's a little bit, it's a tension area. And I'll explain that because in this way. If you have a right to privacy, then I have a duty not to intrude upon your privacy in any way. Okay. And that's true. There are civil torts. There have always been civil torts about privacy. One of them is public disclosure of private facts. Okay. And we have cases like this in our court. You saw one a few weeks ago where a woman was with a certain guy, and she sent him inappropriate photos. And he, after they broke up, shared the photos with his new girlfriend, and she put the photos on the internet. Okay? Now, that sounds like public disclosure of private facts. Okay? But she publicized them by giving them to her boyfriend, her then boyfriend.
Yeah.
Okay? So they weren't private facts anymore after she published them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think we talked in property about sleeping on your rights. Did I talk? I don't think
you did.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a thing in the law that I'll give an example of property. If you own a piece of property and someone puts a fence around it and builds a structure on it and starts parking their car on it, and you know about it and you don't do anything about it, they're trespassers, right?
Yeah.
And you don't do anything about it. Well, after a certain period of time in Texas, they have adverse possessed the property, and they have a legal claim.
Oh, no.
Because you're sleeping on your rights. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah.
Okay. Well, similarly, if you have a right to privacy, but you've published photos of yourself, inappropriate photos of yourself, and by publishing, I mean you've given them to a third party, or you've given them to someone, okay?
Or posted them.
If you post them yourself, you're published. They're published. Yeah. They live forever.
Yeah.
And you can't get them back. But you've done more than slept on your right to privacy. You've blown up your right to privacy. Now, presumably you still have your private parts, or your things that you could photograph, and now you photograph them, but you don't send those pictures to anybody. Why you would do that, I don't know. Well, those pictures are protected, right?
Okay.
Because they haven't been disclosed. But that's a foolish way to live your life, because pictures like that live forever, and they're always you. So the new pictures don't matter. So that's one of these rules for young people. We have these phones, we have these cameras on the phones. We take these into our beds, and we scroll through them and we read them, which is probably a bad habit to have that screen in front of you at night to keep you awake. But it's not immoral. It's not wrong, metaphysically wrong. Mm-hmm. But taking a picture of yourself, or letting somebody else take a picture of yourself, it's just foolish.
Yeah.
It's just foolish. This person that you trust, are you married to them? Probably not. If you're married to them, they probably don't need those pictures, right? Well, no, I mean, they don't.
No, it's true.
They don't need them. So what?
This is interesting.
I kind of look at things in a cost-benefit relationship type way. What's the benefit of having that picture of you? Just you having the picture of yourself. Why is that a good thing? I can't think of any reason. Okay, and then why would you have it? And then why would you share it?
Yeah.
You are not helping your right to privacy.
You're sleeping on your rights.
You're sleeping on your rights, and you've blown up your rights, and you don't have those rights anymore.
Yeah, you gave them
You
away.
gave them away.
Yep.
Yep. So,
Wow.
so you want to protect your rights, just like you want to make sure if somebody moves into your property that you quickly call the police or do what's necessary to remove them, because otherwise they may have some right.
Absolutely.
And so,
Going alongside privacy again, a lot of people believe that their phones are listening to them. Is that against the law?
well,
Or do we, somewhere in the contract when we sign,
well,
get this phone, we agree to that?
first of all those terms of service agreements and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
we never read them.
Well, most people don't read them, and I confess, I don't read them. You know,
Okay, I feel a lot better now.
100 million people have clicked on this, and we're clicking on it. But your phones, your
Alexa, your technology.
well, let's differentiate between actual spying, where they're listening to you talk and they know it's you and they want to know what Kayla says. That's a thing. And I think that happens, but I think it's very rare.
Okay.
Okay. Here's what happens. They know that Kayla is a young college graduate, female, age so and so, and they probably know what your spending habits are because you buy stuff on Amazon, right?
That's so creepy.
So they know all that. And they want to know if we put these ads, if we embed these ads on Facebook or on whatever website you visit, and you click on them, we want to know the click rate for this type of ad for a 22-year-old female college graduate. Well, they know that. They are mining that data like a big dog. Okay?
Judge, though, sometimes I feel like they hear my thoughts. It's really creepy.
Well,
like I'll say something and then it shows up on my internet, and that's what creeps me out. And I know I have conversations like this all the time.
I can only tell you what I know.
Okay.
I've had the same thing, not from a thought, but remember, most people think with words. Mm-hmm. So when they talk to other people, they're helping form their thoughts, and they'll think about that later. So you said it at some time.
Probably. Yeah.
Probably.
But they form together kind of what you're talking. But how
Well,
do they have people listening to you?
I don't think so. I think it's an algorithm, an AI algorithm. I'm talking about something that is not my wheelhouse.
Okay, but this has to do with privacy, because I feel like it's against my privacy.
Well, the question is, you've decided to carry that phone around with you.
So am I giving them my right?
Well, you I don't know what the terms of service say, but you're carrying that phone around with you and you're clicking on certain products and you're using apps and you've filled out stuff on there so that they know what age you are. Your internet service provider knows how much stuff you buy. They know how much income you probably have. They've put you into a slot in the aggregate consumer profile, and so they have a consumer profile on a bunch of people, and they use that to steer consumption patterns, and they're
really good at it.
And they're really good at it because it's billions of dollars. So I guess the word to the wise is, there's an ancient admonition to be wise, but there's also an ancient admonition to be moderate. And you're going to get ads for the things that you click on, and you're going to get ads related to the things that you click on. And if you look at Amazon, it suggests things that you want. And if you're always buying those suggested things, is that bad? Well, maybe it is, but maybe it's just facilitating what you want. Mm. So the biggest question is, what do you want? And do you want the right things? Mm. And that's a forming your soul question. right?
It's very deep
Remember,
going from Amazon ads.
I think we talked about engraving characters, engraving those characters. Well, you're engraving your heart when you buy stuff on Amazon in a little way.
Yeah.
But if you're always, it's like people who watch pornography. You're engraving that stuff on your heart and soul. So don't do that.
Yeah.
And if you're always buying, if you're always doing retail therapy on Amazon, well, maybe you don't need all that stuff. I mean,
absolutely.
if you do, you do. But
I agree. I agree with you, but kind of going to privacy rights, so they're not infringing on our rights by hearing us and doing our algorithms, because I do think they're hearing us.
Well,
if
once
they
again,
were to, hypothetically.
I don't. Well, what does the terms of service say? You're carrying the phone with you. Now, the Texas has made some laws, and I support them to limit the ability of the corporate entities that are internet service providers or data miners. There's some laws that limit that, but if you don't want people to know what weird thing you buy, well, don't buy it if it's that weird. Absolutely.
I just think that they're trying to program people to be consumers, and that really bothers me.
But that's exactly true.
Yeah, it really bothers me.
It is in their interest to generate more reliable and compliant consumers. And this is a little bit off topic, but we used to have an educational system that promoted civics and what would be called the liberal arts, okay? And that's not bad. The liberal arts are wonderful things. We would learn about music. We would learn about literature. We would learn history, okay? Because history will tell you a lot, because that's what people are like. People are like history, okay? Absolutely. And so if we have liberal arts, if our educational system was designed to graduate people who understood history and could make good judgments, we'd have a different citizenry than we have now. Now, our educational system is mostly focused, well, I changed that. 50, 60 years ago, our educational system became focused on producing workers. We want good, compliant workers. That's why we're going to have bells ring and you show up and you sit down and you be quiet, because workers show up on time and sit down and be quiet. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing in class to sit down and be quiet, but the sort of authoritarian concept of a school system where it's all big brick building, no windows. You come in, you sit down, you listen to the teacher, you write out your assignment. That's a worker training facility. That's not a citizen training facility.
Oh, wow. So
we've been being trained to be a certain thing by large entities, including the government, for decades. And having the private market of large corporations want to train us to be good consumers.
How do we break out of that?
Well, I think fundamentally, I said you have to decide what you want. People have to decide who they want to be. Do they want to be an excellent consumer? Oh, look at my new bag. It's a so-and-so brand. Oh, I've got the best new shotgun. It's a so-and-so brand. Oh, look at my new car. It's a Ford F-250 with everything on it, which is, none of those things are bad things. But if that's the goal, if you want to be the person who has the Ford F-250 that's got all the bells and whistles, and that's the most important thing, well, then, yeah, you want to be a really good consumer. That's your goal. Okay. But if you want to be the best human being you can be, then you take advantage of the consumption opportunities that help you do that. But your goal is not to be a good consumer. Your goal, we're getting far afield from rights and privacy, but the ultimate goal, the telos. There's a word in Greek called telos, and it means the ultimate purpose, right? Every human being has purposes, but the ultimate purpose of every human being is to be with God, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so what are your purposes along the way to that purpose of being with God? Well, I'm supposed to be a good worker, because
The Bible tells us to.
yep, be a good
Yeah.
worker. But I'm also supposed to be a good father, supposed to be a good brother, supposed to be a good husband, supposed to be a good son, right? Supposed to be a good friend. I'm supposed to love my neighbor as myself, right?
Very true.
And put God first. Well, if you do all those things, you're not, the focus of your identity is not a consumer focus. And on the other hand, I buy a lot of books, I read a lot of books, and so Amazon knows I really like books on Christianity, on philosophy, on the law. So they're feeding that consumption. So it's a bit of a conundrum, but we have the biggest consumer market in the world. The United States is the largest consumer market in the world. That's not a bad thing. It helps us. It helps make America wealthy, but is it making every individual more wealthy or less wealthy?
Or in debt.
Well,
That's a whole other
that's a whole other
topic. Yeah.
story. If you're buying stuff on Amazon and you don't pay your credit card bill off at the end of every month, well, you're making an error.
Absolutely. But I think I see when I have visited other countries, they don't have as many options as we have, and they live a lot more conservative. They don't have the Walmart and the Target and all of these things. I mean, I go into Target for one thing, I end up spending $150,
Right.
And so I
Well,
just think the
once
way
again,
it's a choice. Yes.
that store, there's a thing called merchandising. Stores are arranged to make you pick stuff up off the shelf and buy it. That's why they have end caps that have all the cupcakes on them. Go into a convenience store. The first thing you walk into in most convenience stores is an end cap that's filled with short-term consumable sugar stuff.
Oh, that's so true.
If
Yeah.
if you go in a convenience store and you need a quart of oil, or you need some odd thing that they will have, it's not the first thing. You got to go look for it. Okay. But passing that Hostess Twinkie aisle end cap, you might just pick one of those up.
Yeah.
And that's their job, is to give you that flash of, I want that. Okay. And so
I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, though, because I think that's what's wrong with America. Like, we're wealthy in a lot of areas, but we're also in debt. We're also obese. Like, there's so many things that, because, we have this one thing, there's so many other places that we're failing internally,
but
externally.
But I agree. I agree
Yeah.
with you.
So how do we navigate through that?
Well, you navigate that by engraving the virtues that you want onto your soul. You navigate that by saying, I just don't need that in between meal snack. And of course, appetite and controlling all that's a whole. I'm not qualified to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Okay. And if I was, it would probably be a 20-hour, video series. But there are people who are doing that, and you can find them. From that standpoint, like I say, we're far afield from rights, privacy, and the internet. But let's talk about the internet briefly.
Yes,
Now with
Go in
that
with
slight
that.
segue.
Yeah.
There are hundreds or thousands of people on the internet who can explain appetite control, and they can explain how your endocrine system works to generate insulin and glucose and all these complex words that I can't pronounce that are important. and you can study that a little bit and become as knowledgeable as you want. I have a belief that if you have an average intellect in the United States, you can probably know anything you need or want to know if you work at it hard enough, because the information's all there on the internet, and YouTube videos are a fascinating way to learn about a wide array of topics. And I listen, I watch, and I never watch YouTube. I listen to YouTube on my phone when I'm driving, especially when I'm driving up to take care of my farm and my bees and stuff. And maybe we'll have a segment later on great things to listen to on the internet that will help you, improve you.
Absolutely.
But
do you think, kind of going into internet and rights and privacy, it is cohesive with this? Do you think that the government should be able to control like what we see, like, and control what we see or what comes on our phone?
Well,
and they do, but like, do you think that they should be able to?
First of all, the government has a duty to preserve the country, and that's kind of been held up by courts. The specifics always matter, but there used to be a large overt threat from communism. Now it's still out there; it's still an idea, and it's still lurking in many people. But you're not allowed to promulgate the overthrow of the government in the United States. Well, that's violating their freedom of speech. No, it's not. They don't have the right to overthrow the government. They have the right to elect a new government and promote that.
Unless you're Valenzuela.
Well,
Just kidding.
Yeah.
We won't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the United States, absolutely.
Right. In the United States, we have a right to elect a new government, and you have a right to say, I disagree with this politician because I think they're evil and wrong. And you can go down the list of things. The government can't censor that. The government can't stop that. But if you say, I want to establish a caliphate, I want to establish a communist dictatorship, no, you don't get to say that. Those areas are boundary areas that the courts and the government and activists are always negotiating. I'm not real. The purpose of this series is not that.
Yeah.
The purpose of this series is to talk about how young people can navigate their way in life, avoid foolish things, and reap big opportunities, because there are big opportunities for young people. We're going to talk about that in the next segment, the big opportunities that are available. But the internet is a dangerous place, and there's bad stuff on the internet, and you want to stay away from that bad stuff. And the internet is a tool, but it's also a mind control device, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Nietzsche said, be careful when you look into the abyss, because the abyss looks into you. Okay? Well, in some sense, the internet is the abyss. There's no bottom to it, and it's bigger than bigger can be, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're on the internet, don't click on stuff. If you click on it and it looks a little wrong, or it looks a little prurient, or it appeals to something in you that you know is wrong, get off of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And you will probably, after you click on it, you'll be offered that.
Because of the algorithm.
Because the algorithms know that you clicked on it. Mm-hmm. So be careful of those things.
I would say, Judge, based off of the purpose of this series and such, it goes back to character, though. Like, if you have a strong character and you understand your purpose, when you click on those things, you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to click off that. I didn't mean to click. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to want to do that.
But you know how we talked about the government's program people to be good workers, and the big corporations are programming people to be good consumers?
Yeah.
people are programmable, right?
Yeah.
And so who's going to program you? And my answer to that is, why don't you and God work together to program you?
Absolutely.
Right?
Amen.
Because
Amen.
you can do that. You can partner with God and say, God, I don't know exactly who I'm supposed to be, but I'm interested in, I'm interested in machines. I'm interested in cars. And I want to learn more about that. But I want to be the best person that I can be, not mechanic, not engineer, but the best person. And so I need your help forming me. What, please show me the steps to form me. And the steps are, well, there's the 10 Commandments, there's the, there, and you pick out people that will help you form yourself. And you don't have to talk to them. You just watch them and go do okay, this feels right. Yep, I'm going to do these things. And I tell people who need help, get on a schedule,
Yeah.
do things at a certain time, eat healthy, get some exercise, do it on a schedule, and form yourself. Give yourself a training plan, and you can do that short term and you can do it long term. I'm going to read more. I'm going to read more fiction because I need to relax more. And I enjoyed reading when I was younger, before I went to law school. And
That's what they
so I'm
say.
going to read more fiction.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm going to do. But give yourself reminders. Give yourself reminders of who you want to be and what you want it to look like in 5 or 10 or 20 years.
Absolutely.
I think Will Rogers said, people don't need instructing so much as reminding. And we're all that way. I mean, I'm 70 years old and I wear looks like a dog tag, but it's a Bible verse because it reminds me, who I am and who I can count on. Yeah. So.
Amen. But I think it goes along the internet and not sleeping on your rights kind of goes along the lines of you are who you hang out with, what you put in.
Oh, without a doubt.
Is going to come out.
Without a doubt.
And it's if you hang around people who are educated, know who they are Christians, well-moraled, you're going to become that eventually because we are programmable. That's the way God made us. He made us to be sheep, to follow his voice. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to be that way because that's the way God designed us.
No.
But
No.
it's like you're
But
saying, how do we
if you're
steer
not
ourselves?
conscious
Yes,
of
that's huge.
what's going on here, I am being programmed in a way that isn't really what I want long term.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So if you know that, but you say hang around people. I have a screen. It pops up, I think, on Saturday morning or maybe Sunday. I'm not sure. And it says, you spent this much time on your phone. Or you, okay?
Oh, I
think everybody has that, right? Well,
The daily-
if you look at your daily phone usage, you're hanging around with your phone a lot more than you're hanging around with your friends.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, great
so
point.
so you're programming yourself, and so just be aware of that. And if you want to blame the phone or the internet service provider or Apple or Google, well, who decided to carry that phone around? And by the way, they do make untrackable phones, and I can't remember the name of the company, and they're not cheap. But you can get a phone. It's not an Apple phone. It's not a Google phone. It's a former Navy SEAL, and I can't remember his name. But you can get devices that are not tracked.
I will say though, whoever it is, the man, society, whoever you want to call it, whatever you want to put a name to, the devil, whatever, they make it very hard to live without this.
Oh,
I went through a season where I'm gonna get a brick phone. I just want to read. I want to be outside. I don't want to spend my time on here. It's ruining my life. And literally, I looked into it, and because of my job and such, it's almost impossible to not have it.
It's very, very difficult.
Nearly impossible.
And
yeah.
that's why the most important thing about anybody is their character. Because You've got to say, this is not phone time. Or you've got to say, I'm not going on those internet sites. Or you've got to say, I'm just not going to. I play Sudoku. Do you know the game
Yeah.
Sudoku? Well, it's an opiate. So you just
It's your
gotta,
TikTok, Judge.
Yeah, it's my. I don't have.
He doesn't have to.
I don't
Well, he
watch
has a TikTok now.
Well,
Jennifer made you one.
Well, yeah, but I don't have it on my phone.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's Chinese. They're data mining the heck out of it. We'll
They
see.
do. Oh
We'll
my!
see.
It's addicting.
But
yeah.
you know,
Anyways.
the Chinese do it for national security and commerce. But all these entities do data mining. They're all mining your data to see if you'll buy a fluffy pillow or a new purse or whatever it is that you clicked on lately. Hey, would you? Oh, this would go great with your new purse, right? They do that.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen, and that goes back to: Are you just going to be programmed by your phone, or are you going to be in charge of you? And so the internet's a dangerous place, but it's a great opportunity place too. You can find stuff that you need. You can also find stuff that you didn't know you needed that you might really need. And most people who find stuff that they didn't know they need, they don't need it, right?
Absolutely.
But
Okay, so kind of wrapping this up, Judge, before I ask you a few questions from last episode, how would you wrap up rights, privacy, and the internet?
okay, when you think about rights, know in your mind that this is a right that I'm entitled to because I signed this contract, or because of sometimes laws are passed and they give you a right to your health data. Okay, you're entitled to go to your doctor's office and get all your records. Okay, you're entitled to the privacy of your health records because that's a statute. That's statutory law. Okay, some things you're entitled to because they're fundamental. They're fundamental rights. Okay, and they're negative rights. People are not allowed to assault me. I have a right to defend myself against an assault. Okay. I have a right to free speech. Nobody's required to give me a platform. Okay, so understand that distinction.
Absolutely.
And if there are legal things that you're entitled to, like privacy for healthcare records, or you have an attorney and they have your case records, you're entitled to those records. Okay, by law. Other things you're entitled to because you have arranged a private contract with them, and you're gonna, you have a right to your car because you're making the payments and you blah blah blah. Okay, so understand that distinction. The next distinction thing is privacy, which is to say, don't give away your privacy and don't sleep on your right to privacy. Don't give away private information that you want private. There's an old somebody comes up to you and goes, "Can you keep a secret?" And you say, "Yes, I can," because they expect you to tell them something juicy, right? And the answer to that is, "I can too." Right? Keep a secret. If you don't want people to know it, don't tell anyone. Okay? Because telling someone makes it liable to be known. Okay? There's no recourse when you tell someone something private and they tell someone else, unless you've written it down into a non-disclosure agreement or some kind of contractual basis. Okay? And finally, the internet is a wonderful, wonderful, dangerous, dangerous place. And so when you go on the internet, make sure that you're in control and you're not giving your control away to some data miner who's going to then suggest further things to you that just puts you down into a place you don't want to be. Particularly, all of these places, they're either going to degrade, the bad place, they're going to degrade your soul, or they're going to cost you money. And what do you get out of it? Nothing.
Yeah, negative things.
Negative return on investment.
Yeah, exactly.
Because your time is an investment.
And it's something you cannot get back.
And it's something you can't get back.
You can't measure it.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Well,
Okay.
there we
Well,
go. This was a kind of a deep and a bit of a dark subject. We'll go back to some questions now. Maybe that won't be so dark.
yes.
Or maybe they will be. I haven't seen them yet.
Alrighty. Okay, we're going to kind of go back to last episode's topic, property, and I'm going to ask you a question about property ownership and about insurance.
Okay.
So what documents prove you legally own something?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, some things have titles or deeds. Most vehicles, boats, RVs, things like that have titles. Okay. And that certificate of title, this happens a lot. People will buy a car, or people will sell a car. I take that back. People will sell a car, and they will leave the tag, the license plates on it, and they'll take the money and they'll sign I think it's a 130U. It's a Texas Department of Motor Vehicle Form 130U. Maybe that's wrong, but it's close. And that is the thing that the buyer takes to the Tarrant County tax assessor, or whatever county you're in, the tax assessor, and they change the title of the motor vehicle to them. They take it out of your name and give it to them. What happens if they never transfer the title?
Then it's never.
Then it's still yours.
Then it's still yours. Yeah, it's not theirs.
And if
yet.
they get in an accident,
You're liable.
you might be liable. And what they often do is they ride every toll road in the state, and they run up a big toll bill on the license tag that is your tag, and you owe that bill.
Dang.
So that has to do with not owning it. You still own it, but you didn't mean to own it. So you go with them down to the Tarrant County tax assessor, or whatever county you're in, and you transfer the title, and you watch it done. Or if you want to, if you sell it, you can take the plates off of it and say, good luck. You better drive right down to the tax office and get this registered, because you got no plates.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, that doesn't solve the problem if they put some stolen plates on it and then wreck it somewhere, or wreck somebody. You might be liable because it is your car, but you might get out of that. Hey, I sold it to him. I took the plates off, and I have the signed bill of sale, or the sign. You keep some paperwork.
Okay.
But in terms of how to prove you own it, well, you've got the title, and people do come and they tell me stuff, and they don't have the title to the car.
I've seen
And I
that,
said, well,
yeah.
why didn't you transfer the title? Well, and the answer is, were you just trying to avoid paying the sales tax? Were you just trying to drive it somewhere without having the plates, your plates, so that you could get past the toll roads and not have to pay the tolls? So I don't know the answer. If you buy something that is titled, get the title.
Yeah.
Okay, do the paperwork. Things that are not titled: purses, boots, backpacks, furniture, all that kind of stuff is not titled. And there's sometimes furniture companies come in here and sue people who bought furniture on time, and they have a security interest in that property. So they're entitled to get the property back, and they'll go back and repo the stuff. And they have a very good description of the property and the bill of sale.
Oh, wow.
So the sales stuff gives them a security interest. So a security interest means they can snatch it back if it's not paid for. And all car loans have a security interest. You buy a new tractor, it's got a security interest.
Okay, that's good to
whatever
know.
that is.
I never
Okay.
knew that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you for that
All
insight.
right. Next one.
Okay. Insurance. What does property insurance usually cover?
Okay. The policy, this is a specific, what does this policy cover? But let's say a homeowner's policy, okay? If you have a homeowner's policy, you're probably protected against hail and fire, and maybe flood. Sometimes flood insurance is different. Okay. You may be protected if someone, if you're the neighbor kid is playing on the swing in the back and he breaks his leg, that may be covered. But you need to check for those kind of things. The typical losses in a home are fire and a tree is blown over onto your roof. That's gonna likely be covered. But the civic policy makes you got to check that. And I have an insurance broker who's a really good guy, and he does a great job. And I talk to him, what is this, and he'll tell me, and I just trust him. So,
Yeah.
but if you buy your insurance directly from the company, you need to read that policy and make sure you understand it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay.
Alrighty, y'all. So that's our wrap of episode 3 of rights, privacy, and the internet. And we added some fun convos in there. Episode 4, we are discussing seizing the opportunity of youth in the United States in 2025, skills or education, scarcity, trade-offs, establishing credit, and pushing yourself. So please come back for episode 4. Thank you so much for watching.
We look forward to episode 4 because it's kind of in the form of a commencement address for all the college and high school graduates, mostly high school graduates, because I think they need a little word of encouragement and also a word of there's big opportunities in our country, and you should be seizing those. You should be making yourself the person who's capable of seizing those opportunities. So, Kayla, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody remember to send in questions if you have them, and we sure enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you.